The Silent Awakening. The Kraxan Empire celebrated another millennium of undisputed rule across the galaxy. In their grand halls of crystalline architecture, the Supreme Overlord Zexther raised his arms in triumph, his scaled skin reflecting the light of three moons through the transparent dome above. "Let it be known," he declared to the assembled dignitaries, "that the greatest threat to our dominion, humanity, is nothing but dust in the cosmic wind." The assembled crowd cheered, their voices echoing through the vast chamber. None questioned this truth. After all, Earth had fallen centuries ago, its cities reduced to ash, its military might scattered to the stars. The human race, once considered the most unpredictable and dangerous species in the galaxy, was now nothing more than a cautionary tale told to young Kraxan warriors. But deep within the Omega Nebula, hidden from the watchful eyes of the Empire, Captain Dahlia Frost stood at the command center of humanity's last stronghold, Sanctuary Base Alpha. The massive underground facility, carved into the core of a supposedly dead planet, housed the remnants of humanity's greatest achievement, Project Nightfall. "Status report," Dahlia commanded, her voice firm but quiet. The command center hummed with activity as officers monitored countless displays showing the positions of Kraxan patrol ships throughout the galaxy. Her steel-gray eyes reflected the blue glow of the holographic displays, while her close-cropped white hair marked her as one of the few surviving veterans of the fall. Lieutenant Riker Torres, her second-in-command, approached with a data tablet. "The last sleeper cell has confirmed activation, Captain. All 37 hidden bases are now online and awaiting your command." His dark features were illuminated by the soft light of the underground facility, the scars on his face a testament to battles long past. Dahlia nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of the command console. "And the Phoenix Protocol?" "All ships are reporting green status," Riker replied. "The quantum drives are stable, and the stealth systems are operating beyond expected parameters. We've managed to salvage and upgrade more vessels than initially projected." For 300 years, humanity had played dead. While the Kraxan Empire celebrated their victory, the survivors had gone deep underground, focusing all their resources and determination into a single, unified purpose: revenge. But this wasn't just about vengeance. It was about justice, about reclaiming their place among the stars. Commander Kaiden Walsh appeared on the main view screen, his weathered face showing signs of excitement. "Captain Frost, the Artemis array is fully operational. We've successfully masked our quantum signatures from all known detection methods." The Artemis array, a network of advanced satellites designed to hide human activities from alien sensors, was perhaps their greatest technological achievement since the fall. "Excellent," Dahlia responded, allowing herself a small smile. "Begin Phase 1 of Operation Lazarus." Across the galaxy, hidden human operatives began their careful work. Unlike the brute force approach of their ancestors, this new generation of humanity had learned the value of patience and precision. They had studied their enemies, learned their weaknesses, and prepared accordingly. Deep in Kraxan space, Trade Minister Vexel noticed something odd about the latest shipping manifests. Several cargo vessels had reported slight delays, nothing serious enough to raise alarms, but just enough to create a pattern. Before he could investigate further, his assistant entered with urgent news about a trade dispute in the Outer Rim. The manifests were forgotten, exactly as planned. In the Sanctuary Base Alpha's Strategic Command Center, Dahlia and her team watched as hundreds of small signals indicated their agents were in position. These weren't soldiers in the traditional sense. They were engineers, scientists, and strategists who had spent generations preparing for this moment. "The Kraxan Empire believes they know humanity," Dahlia addressed her officers. "They think they understand what we're capable of. They remember us as warriors who charged headlong into battle, who relied on brute force and determination." She paused, looking at each face in the room. "They're about to learn how wrong they are." Lieutenant Torres displayed a holographic map of known space. Tiny dots of light represented each hidden human base, each sleeper cell, each carefully positioned asset. "All teams report ready, Captain. We await your command." Dahlia stood silent for a moment, feeling the weight of centuries of preparation on her shoulders. Humanity had not just survived, they had evolved. While the galaxy laughed at their supposed extinction, they had built something unprecedented, a shadow network that spanned the stars. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Operation Lazarus begins now." Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters activated. In the depths of space, massive ships began to power up, their advanced stealth systems keeping them invisible to Kraxan sensors. These weren't the warships of old Earth. They were something new, something that combined centuries of hidden technological advancement with the lessons learned from their near extinction. As the first phase of their plan began, Dahlia looked at the galaxy map once more. The Kraxan Empire had no idea what was coming. They had forgotten one crucial thing about humanity: they were at their most dangerous when backed into a corner. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's fall. Soon they would learn the true cost of their arrogance. Humanity wasn't just back, they had never truly left. They had been watching, waiting, and preparing. And now, after 3 centuries of silence, it was time for the galaxy to remember why humanity had once been feared. Shadows of the past. In the glittering capital of the Kraxan Empire, High Admiral Zexkar stood before the Galactic Defense Council, his scaled hands trembling slightly as he delivered the report. We've lost contact with 3 outposts in the Outer Rim. Complete communication blackout, no distress signals, no signs of combat. The chamber fell silent, the usual bureaucratic chatter dying instantly. Supreme Overlord Zexter leaned forward on his crystalline throne, his eyes narrowing. Natural phenomena? The question carried a hint of desperate hope. The Empire hadn't faced a serious military threat in centuries, and the idea of one emerging now was almost inconceivable. Unlikely, Zexkar replied. Our sensors detected unusual energy signatures before losing contact, signatures that, he hesitated, that match no known species or technology in our database. Meanwhile, aboard the HMS Nemesis, one of humanity's most advanced stealth vessels, Captain Dahlia Frost watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The first phase of Operation Lazarus was proceeding exactly as planned. Lieutenant Torres entered the bridge, carrying new intelligence reports. The Kraxan still haven't detected our quantum signature masking technology, Torres reported. Their sensors are passing right through our ships as if we're nothing but empty space. He allowed himself a small smile. 3 centuries of preparation are paying off. Dahlia nodded, her attention focused on the holographic display showing the positions of their hidden fleet. The ships weren't clustered together as the Kraxan would expect from a military force. Instead, they were scattered across the galaxy, each one positioned near critical Imperial infrastructure. Years of patient observation had revealed every weakness in the Empire's defenses. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Contact Commander Marcus Vale, tell him to activate the Phantom Protocol. Deep within the Thorian Nebula, Commander Marcus Vale stood in the control center of Project Phoenix, humanity's most ambitious undertaking since the fall. The massive facility, hidden within the nebula's radiation clouds, housed the fruits of centuries of technological advancement. Phantom Protocol initiated, Vale announced to his crew. The facility hummed with energy as hundreds of quantum computers began their work. Across the galaxy, dormant human technology embedded in Kraxan systems started to wake up. These weren't simple viruses or malware. They were fragments of advanced AI, pieces of a larger whole that had waited patiently for this moment. In the Kraxan capital, chaos erupted as critical systems began to fail. Defense grids flickered, communication networks garbled their transmissions, and automated transport systems ground to a halt. The Empire's technical experts rushed to solve the problems, not realizing that every attempted fix only activated more dormant human code. Send word to all ships, Supreme Overlord Zexter commanded, his voice tight with growing concern. Maximum alert status. Something is wrong and I want to know what it is. But the Empire's ships were already compromised. For centuries, human agents had worked their way into shipyards, maintenance facilities, and manufacturing plants. They had added subtle modifications to Kraxan vessels, changes so small they seemed like normal design variations. Now those changes were revealing their true purpose. Back on the Nemesis, Dahlia received confirmation that the Phantom Protocol was fully activated. Show me the Empire's response, she ordered. The tactical display shifted, showing hundreds of Kraxan warships moving to defensive positions. Their formations were perfect, their tactics textbook, and completely useless against what was coming. They still think this is a conventional attack, Lieutenant Torres observed. They're preparing for warships, for fighters, for anything except what we've actually planned. Dahlia's expression remained neutral, but there was a fierce pride in her voice. Humanity's greatest strength was never our weapons or our ships. It was our ability to adapt, to think differently, to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. She turned to face her crew. The Kraxan defeated us because they understood who we were. They have no defense against who we've become. Commander Vale's voice came through the quantum comm, undetectable by Kraxan sensors. Project Phoenix is showing green across all systems, Captain. The Lazarus grid is fully operational. We're ready for the next phase. In the depths of space, invisible to the Empire's best detection systems, humanity's Ghost Fleet moved into position. These ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They were a fusion of organic and mechanical technology, capable of things that would seem like magic to their enemies. The Empire took everything from us, Dahlia said quietly, more to herself than to her crew. Our homes, our colonies, our future among the stars. They thought they'd broken us, reduced us to nothing but a memory. She straightened in her command chair, her voice growing stronger. Instead, they forced us to become something new, something stronger. The tactical display showed more Kraxan ships moving into defensive formations. They were preparing for an attack that would never come, looking for an enemy that was already inside their defenses. Humanity had spent centuries not just hiding, but evolving, developing technologies and strategies that would have been impossible before their defeat. Send the signal to all cells, Dahlia commanded. Execute Phase 3. She watched as acknowledgements came in from hidden bases and sleeper agents across the galaxy. The Empire wanted to write us into history as a cautionary tale. Instead, they're about to become one themselves. Across the galaxy, humanity's revenge was taking shape. Not with the thunder of guns or the flash of explosions, but with the quiet precision of a plan centuries in the making. The Kraxan Empire had taught humanity a harsh lesson about power and survival. Now, it was time for humanity to teach them something about patience and evolution. The Silent Storm. The Kraxan Empire's central command center erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. High Admiral Zexkar watched in horror as one by one, their most secure military installations went dark. No explosions, no battles, no signs of conventional warfare. They simply ceased to exist in their detection grid. Impossible, he muttered, his scaled hands clenching into fists. Our defense systems are the most advanced in known space. Nothing could penetrate them this completely. But the evidence was undeniable. Something was systematically dismantling the Empire's military infrastructure, and they were powerless to stop it. Aboard the HMS Nemesis, Captain Dahlia Frost watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The quantum processors of Project Phoenix had performed beyond their expectations, turning the Empire's own defense systems against them. Each Kraxan military installation was being isolated, their communications severed, their weapons rendered useless. "Status report on Operation Shadowfall," she commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were achieving. Lieutenant Torres accessed the quantum network, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Phase 3 is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Lazarus grid has successfully compromised 87% of their primary defense networks. The Empire's ships are effectively blind. In the heart of Kraxan space, Commander Marcus Vale directed the Ghost Fleet's operations from the stealth carrier Prometheus. The massive vessel, nearly invisible to conventional sensors, served as the coordination center for humanity's most ambitious military operation in history. All Phantom units report ready, Vale announced through the quantum comm. The neural network is stable and synchronized. We're ready to begin the convergence. What the Kraxan Empire was about to witness would redefine their understanding of warfare. For centuries, they had dominated the galaxy through brute force and superior numbers. But humanity had spent their exile developing something far more sophisticated. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just a collection of ships, it was a single, unified consciousness. Each vessel was connected through quantum entanglement, sharing information and responding to threats faster than any conventional fleet could manage. The ships moved like a school of fish, each one anticipating the other's actions perfectly. Supreme Overlord Zexter stood in his war room, surrounded by his most trusted advisors. "Launch everything we have," he commanded, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I want every ship, every fighter, every weapon we possess deployed now." But as the Kraxan fleet emerged from their bases, they found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't comprehend. The Ghost Fleet didn't fight like traditional warships. They moved through space like liquid mercury, flowing around enemy formations, appearing and disappearing at will. "They're not using conventional drives," one of the Kraxan science officers reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "These ships, they're bending space itself. It's like they're moving through dimensions we can't even see." On the Prometheus, Commander Vale activated the next phase of their attack. "Initiate the quantum mesh," he ordered. The Ghost Fleet responded as one, their advanced drives creating a web of distorted spacetime around the Kraxan forces. Captain Frost watched from the Nemesis as the trap closed. Humanity remembers what it means to be hunted, she transmitted to all human ships. We remember hiding in the darkness, watching our worlds burn, but in that darkness we evolved, we transcended what we once were. The Kraxan fleet found themselves caught in a maze of twisted space. Their weapons fire passed harmlessly through apparent targets, while their sensors showed contradictory information about the location and number of enemy ships. It was as if they were fighting shadows, ghosts that could touch them but couldn't be touched in return. Lieutenant Torres monitored the battle data streaming in. The Empire's fleet is completely disoriented. Their command structure is breaking down. They can't coordinate their defenses against attacks they can't understand. In the Kraxan capital, panic began to spread. The mighty empire that had dominated the galaxy for a millennium was facing an enemy that made their most advanced technology look primitive in comparison. Their weapons were useless, their defenses meaningless, their vast fleets reduced to confused, isolated groups of ships. "This isn't possible," High Admiral Zexkar whispered, watching as another battle group reported complete loss of navigational control. What have they become? The answer was something the Empire couldn't have predicted. Humanity hadn't spent their exile simply hiding or building better weapons. They had fundamentally reimagined what was possible. The Ghost Fleet represented the culmination of 3 centuries of evolution, both technological and philosophical. "Send the final signal," Captain Frost commanded. "Let's show them exactly what humanity has become." Across the battlefield, the Ghost Fleet began to shift into its final configuration. The ships moved in impossible patterns, their quantum drives creating a cascade of spatial distortions that rippled through the fabric of space itself. This wasn't just a military operation, it was a demonstration of power beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire had expected humanity to return with guns blazing, seeking revenge through conventional warfare. Instead, they had returned as something entirely new, something that operated beyond the boundaries of traditional space and time. They weren't just fighting a war, they were rewriting the rules of what was possible. As the Ghost Fleet closed in on the Kraxan capital, Captain Frost transmitted one final message to the Empire's leadership. "You tried to write us out of history. Instead, you forced us to become its authors." Breaking point. Supreme Overlord Zexther stood in the ancient vault beneath the Imperial Palace, surrounded by artifacts from 1,000 conquered civilizations. His clawed hands trembled as he input the final sequence into a console that hadn't been activated in centuries. "Release the World Breakers," he commanded, his voice hollow with desperation. Deep in space, massive structures began to awaken. The World Breakers were the Empire's ultimate weapons, artificial stars capable of destroying entire solar systems. They were considered too dangerous to use, a last resort that no one had ever dared to activate, until now. Aboard the HMS Nemesis, Captain Dahlia Frost received the warning from their quantum sensors. "They're activating their doomsday weapons," she announced, her voice carrying no trace of fear. "Exactly as we predicted." Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station, his expression grim. "The World Breakers are powering up. Traditional defenses would be useless against weapons of that magnitude." "Traditional defenses aren't what we're using," Dahlia replied, accessing the quantum network. "Commander Vale, initiate Protocol Omega." On the Prometheus, Commander Vale stood before a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with otherworldly energy. The Transcendence Engine, humanity's greatest achievement during their exile, represented technology so advanced it bordered on the metaphysical. Engaging Protocol Omega, Vale confirmed. All Ghost Fleet units synchronize with the quantum matrix. The crystalline structure began to pulse faster, its light spreading through the ship and then out into space itself. The Kraxan military watched in confusion as their sensors detected strange energy patterns emanating from the human fleet. The ghost ships began to move in impossible ways, their forms becoming less solid, more fluid. It was as if they were shifting between states of matter, between dimensions. "The World Breakers are reaching critical power," a Kraxan officer reported, his scales pale with fear. Firing sequence initiated. The artificial stars blazed to life, their energy building to apocalyptic levels. These weapons had the power to tear apart the fabric of space itself, They represented everything the Empire knew about destruction, about domination through overwhelming force. But humanity had learned different lessons during their exile. As the World Breakers released their devastating energy, something unprecedented happened. The Ghost Fleet didn't try to evade or defend. Instead, the ships began to transform. The quantum matrix that connected them pulsed with blinding intensity, and the vessels seemed to phase out of normal space entirely. By all the ancient gods, High Admiral Zexkar whispered, watching the sensor readings. What are they? The Worldbreaker's energy washed over the transformed human fleet like water over stones. Where there should have been destruction, there was only light, being absorbed and redirected through dimensional spaces the Kraxen couldn't even comprehend. On the Nemesis, Dahlia watched as the Transcendence engine did its work. Humanity's greatest strength, she transmitted to all channels, was never our technology or our weapons. It was our ability to transcend our limitations to become more than what we were. The Ghost Fleet had become something beyond ships, beyond normal matter. Each vessel was now a nexus of quantum energy, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions. The Transcendence engine hadn't just given them new weapons. It had allowed humanity to evolve beyond the constraints of conventional physics. Impossible, Supreme Overlord Zexther raged, watching as his ultimate weapons proved useless. Nothing can survive the Worldbreakers, nothing. We didn't survive them, Dahlia's voice came through on all frequencies. We transcended them. The transformed Ghost Fleet began to move with purpose, their new form allowing them to interact with reality in ways the Empire couldn't counter. They didn't need to destroy the Worldbreakers. They simply reached through dimensional barriers and disconnected the artificial stars from their power sources. Lieutenant Torres monitored the quantum network as the operation proceeded. The Empire's weapons are being neutralized. They have nothing left that can touch us. In the Kraxen capital, panic turned to terror as the truth became clear. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's resilience or their technological advancement. They had failed to understand that humanity's exile had forced them to become something entirely new. The Ghost Fleet, now existing in a state between normal space and transcendence, surrounded the capital. Their forms shifted and flowed, defying all known laws of physics. They were no longer bound by the rules of conventional warfare because they had evolved beyond them. Your empire is built on the belief that power comes from domination, Dahlia transmitted to the Kraxen leadership. We learned that true power comes from transformation. You forced us to change, to adapt, to become something more than we were. Now you'll witness the results of that evolution. Commander Vale activated the final sequence of the Transcendence engine. The quantum matrix expanded, encompassing the entire capital system. Reality itself seemed to flex and bend as humanity demonstrated the full extent of their advancement. The empire that had laughed at humanity's fall was about to learn that they had never truly understood what they were fighting. The humans they had defeated centuries ago no longer existed. In their place was something new, something that operated beyond the boundaries of conventional existence. As the Ghost Fleet prepared for their final move, Captain Frost stood on her bridge, watching the Empire's defenses crumble. "We didn't come back for revenge," she said quietly. "We came back to show the galaxy that there are no limits to what humanity can become." Dawn of Transcendence. In the crystalline halls of the Kraxen capital, Supreme Overlord Zexther faced the impossible. Through the vast observation dome, he watched as reality itself seemed to fold and unfold around his empire's seat of power. The Ghost Fleet had surrounded the planet, their transformed vessels existing in multiple dimensions at once, their presence defying everything the Kraxen thought they knew about the universe. "You have one chance," Captain Dahlia Frost's voice resonated through every communication system in the capital. "Surrender and witness the dawn of a new era. Resist and face extinction not through violence but through obsolescence." Commander Vale stood before the fully activated Transcendence engine aboard the Prometheus, its crystalline structure now a nexus of pure quantum energy. "The matrix is stable," he reported. "We can proceed with the final phase." What happened next would be remembered for millennia to come. The Ghost Fleet, already transformed beyond conventional matter, began to pulse with an energy that defied description. The Transcendence engine's power flowed through every ship, every crew member, creating a network of consciousness that stretched across dimensions. "3 centuries ago," Dahlia transmitted, "you taught us that physical power wasn't enough, that ships and weapons and armies could be defeated. So we became something that couldn't be destroyed by conventional means. Lieutenant Torres monitored the quantum readings from the Nemesis. The dimensional barriers are thinning, the transformation is beginning. The Kraxin watched in horror and awe as the human fleet's energy began to affect the fabric of spacetime itself. This wasn't an attack, it was an invitation to evolution. The quantum field generated by the Transcendence engine started to resonate with the fundamental forces of the universe. High Admiral Zexkar, watching from the military command center, finally understood. "They're not here to destroy us," he whispered. "They're here to change everything." The Ghost Fleet had become a bridge between conventional reality and something far more profound. The energy they channeled wasn't destructive, it was transformative. It offered a glimpse of what humanity had discovered during their long exile, that the universe was far more complex, far more malleable than anyone had imagined. "Your empire is built on the idea that power flows from the top down." Dahlia's voice carried a note of both compassion and firmness. "We learned that true power comes from transformation, from the ability to transcend what we once were. Now we offer that same opportunity to the galaxy." The Transcendence engine's power reached its peak, and reality itself seemed to shiver. The quantum field expanded, encompassing the entire capital system, but instead of destruction, it brought enlightenment. Every being within its reach felt their consciousness expand, their understanding deepen. Supreme Overlord Zexter fell to his knees as new awareness flooded his mind. He saw what humanity had become, not just advanced beings, but pioneers of a new form of existence. They had transcended the boundaries between matter and energy, between consciousness and reality. "This is what we were working toward," Commander Vale explained through the quantum network. "Not revenge, not destruction, but evolution, the next step in cosmic development." The Ghost Fleet began the final phase of their transformation. The ships merged with the quantum field, becoming conduits for a power that could reshape reality itself. But they weren't using this power to destroy. They were using it to elevate, to transform, to transcend. "Your empire sought to write us out of history," Dahlia transmitted. "Instead, we became its architects. The age of conventional warfare, of empires built on fear and domination, is over. Welcome to the age of transcendence." Across the galaxy, the news spread rapidly. The mighty Kraxin Empire hadn't been defeated in battle, they had been rendered obsolete by a force they couldn't comprehend. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile, they had used it to evolve beyond the very concepts of victory and defeat. The Transcendence engine's power continued to spread, offering enlightenment to any who would accept it. Many did, eagerly embracing the opportunity to evolve beyond their physical limitations. Others chose to remain as they were, and humanity, in their new, transcendent form, respected that choice. Lieutenant Torres looked at the final readings as the transformation completed. The quantum matrix is stable. The new reality is taking hold. Captain Frost stood on the bridge of the Nemesis, watching as the old order gave way to the new. "We didn't come back to rule the galaxy," she said softly. "We came back to show it that there are no true limits, no final boundaries. There is only evolution, only transcendence."